Thanks for joining us today. My name is Walker Bolger. I am with Ecova. I've been working with Paul Sears to set up everything. Just a few notes before we get started. I have all the audio set to mute currently. I apologize. This is to limit background noise. And so it's a little more clear for everyone. The second thing is, if you are having trouble viewing the link, or if you're having problems downloading, I think there might be like a little extension you have to download for the web browser. If you're having trouble viewing the link, we are recording this. So this is being recorded and will be distributed later. So if you can't see anything, don't worry, you'll get another chance to watch this. So yeah, again, my name is Walker Bolger. I'm with Ecova. Just a couple more minutes here, let a couple more people join. But I think we have a pretty good, list of attendees here, so we'll just jump in. Again, my name is Walker Bolger. I'm with Ecova. Today we're just going to go through what Building OS is and what the mobile meter reading app is. I'll just go over the few things on how you use it, how you set it up, how you start getting meter reads into your system. Then we'll go over some ways to read your meter. I know there's some questions around that. And then I will open it up to some questions, some Q&A, because I know you'll probably have some questions for me. At that point, I'll unmute your lines. I just ask that you mute yourselves unless you're talking, or you can use the little text dialog box if you have access to it, and we can get to your questions near the end. So let's jump right into it. What is Building OS and the mobile meter reading app? Well, Building OS, when used in conjunction with the mobile meter reading app, is a system to track and manage your facility's utility resource use. And by utility, I mean services provided by utilities like electric, gas, water. Some of you may have steam and chilled water, in which we use the system to track that use as well. But the process behind the system is using the mobile meter reading app. Is you take daily reads from your utility meters, and this will help us get a picture of your day-to-day resource use. It's the same process that your utility provider uses when they bill you, except instead of doing it once a month, we're doing it every day. That way, the data is more granular, and it allows better insight and better decision making when it comes to resource use. Everything is web-based, so you don't have to install or configure anything. You don't have to, go to the App Store. All you need to do is use a smartphone's browser, and that can be any smartphone, like an Android or an iPhone. Or if you don't have a smartphone, you can access the reading app via just your regular web browser. You can just use it the same way there. So you can go take your reads, write them down, and come back to your computer and log them through your desktop. So to begin with, let's talk about setting up the system yet. There was a little bit of confusion earlier, but I just wanted to tell everyone no one is active in the system yet. So everyone's information is in the system. If you received a survey link and filled out the survey, you are in the system, you're just not active yet. So we will activate everyone on Monday, this coming Monday, November 24th, at which point you will receive a invitation email. And it looks something like this, if you can see the screen. You'll get an email like this, and it's from Building OS, and it's going to invite you to join the system. Now, these invitation emails will be sent to your property email address. So, for instance, just to kind of pick on somebody, just random location, like say the Courtyard in Hamilton, Ohio, this invitation email will go to the email for that property. So cy-Hamilton, Ohio at concordhotels.com. this property email is going to be the email that you use to log into the system. There aren't any, you don't use a username, you use an email to log into the system, and you will be using the property email. So it's not, there's no specific user so much as it's just a property user. You'll be logging in as the property. So like I said, you'll use that property email to log into the account. When you receive this invitation email, click on the Get Started Now link, so right here, and follow the instructions to complete your account activation. The main part of this activation completion step that you'll be taking is creating a password. So you'll create a password, make sure it's something you can remember, or you can write it down and store it someplace safe. Make sure you share it with everyone who at the property is going to be using the application. So if you have multiple people on your staff who will be taking meter reads, make sure they can all have the password for that is associated to your property email. With that, I'm going to demonstrate how you use the mobile meter reading app. So what you'll do is you'll go to the URL, m.billingos.com. This is all in the documentation provided with this meeting invite. So if you have any questions afterwards, you can refer to the documentation. Everything I'm going over is in the documentation. But you will go to m.billingos.com. This is the login page. So you can see it's pretty simple. And what you do is you're going to enter, this is where you enter that email and password. I'm going to log in as my user account, my email that we use, and then I've gone here before, so remember my password. It's just my email and my password. Once I'm in that, I just click login. And it's going to bring me to the front. Now, this is the front page of the mobile app. This is what the user sees when they log in. I'm logged in as an administrator, so I can see all of the buildings in this little demo application we set up for you. So I can see all of these. However, each site will only see their site, so you don't have to search through all the sites to find yours. Yours will come up, and you will have access to your site. Also keep in mind, I apologize. Also keep in mind that this is optimized for a mobile device, so you'll see a lot of white space over here. That's because I'm using a desktop to enter it. On a mobile device, the white space will go away, and it'll look better once on a mobile device. But again, the mobile app is where meter reads are entered into the system. So the idea is you bring this up using a smartphone or a tablet. You go to the utility meter in question and record the meter read into the system from here. And that's it. You don't have to write it down. You don't have to remember it. You simply put it into the application, hit submit, and you're done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate entering a meter read. I'm going to just use the courtyard, the Columbus Airport courtyard, CY Columbus AP, just as an example. Again, this is just the demo site. So when you click on it, it brings up the site front page. So this is the site front page. And this is where you can see all of your meters. So at the Columbus Airport courtyard, we have a 1 electric meter, 1 gas meter, an occupancy meter, and a water meter. You are not there. If you have other utilities, those can also be represented like chilled water or steam. But in this case, we just have an electric meter and a gas meter. In addition, you're not limited to just 1 electric meter. So if you have 2 electric meters or 2 water meters at your site, those will also be reflected on the system. But in this case, we just have an electric meter, gas meter, occupancy meter, and a water meter. So I'm going to demonstrate. So let's click on the electric meter. This is the first electric meter. So we click on this, and this is going to bring me to the meter page. Now, on the meter page, we basically have the reading bar. This is where you enter the meter read. The grayed out text is the previous meter read, so you can see what was entered last time. This date and time is the timestamp that's going to be associated with the meter read. So November 21st at 12:09 p.m. is going. When you submit time read, that's the timestamp associated to it. And then the submit button. This is basically the button you press to submit the reading. You'll also notice there's a little help icon here where my mouse is. If you click on that, what it does is it brings up a little dialog box with some helpful details regarding the meter. In this case, it's the location of the meter. So the meter is located in the mechanical/electrical room 101 in the main hallway from the front desk. So this will help. So this information, say if someone didn't know where the meter was or forgot where the meter was or was new to the building, I can click on this help and it'll tell them where to find the meter. So I'm going to demonstrate how you take a reading, but as I do, I'm also going to demonstrate some of the validation rules that are in place. And the validation rules are just checks on the numbers that are inputted to help prevent incorrect entries. So for instance, I can see that the last entry was 30,451 kilowatt hours. Now say I come up and I accidentally put in a lower reading, say 30,400 kilowatt hours, and try to submit that. Well, now I get a little meter a validation check that tells me this entry appears to be incorrect. It's above the plus or minus 25% threshold. So basically what this says is it's out of the rules we've set for what we think a good meter reading should look like. This is adjustable and we can move it up and down. But what it is it's just basically a way of, make sure we double check the meter reads before we enter them. You'll notice that there's a submit anyway. So for instance, say the meter was replaced and now it's a new meter with the check where the count has started over. Well, we still want to submit that reading, so we're going to hit submit anyway. But what the validation does is just help you think twice before you hit submit. But in this case, we're just going to put in what would be a good reading. So the first reading was 30,451. So let's put in something like 30,600 kilowatt hours. So there's my new ostensibly correct reading. So let me hit submit. And you can see it brings us back to the facility front page. Now you'll notice the little icon next to electric meter has changed to a green check mark. Well, the green check mark is a visual indicator that says you've taken a read today. So for instance, if it's late in the day and you're not sure if you've taken a meter read, you can log into the mobile app, and if you check mark, oh yes, I've already taken the electrical meter read today, or gas, oh, I haven't taken a gas meter read today, I need to go do that. So it's basically, like I said, a visual indicator to help you show if you've actually taken a read for the day. Just a brief mention, when you take a meter read, most meters have what is known as a meter multiplier on it. So there's the display, and then there's a meter multiplier. What you have to do before you enter it into the system is take the display and multiply it by the meter multiplier before you enter it into the system. I'll cover that later when we go over just ways on reading some common meter types, but I just wanted you to be aware. Most of the values for these meters, so an electrical meter is usually going to be in kilowatt hours. Actually, it's almost always in kilowatt hours. Gas, a high majority of the time it's in CCF, but it can also be in MCF or therms. Water is usually going to be in cubic feet or gallons. It's usually marked on the meter. And then occupancy is a little different. Occupancy is what is entered in percent occupied. So 90% occupied, 80% occupied. And what this does is it helps the analytics when you compare energy or resource use day to day. So for instance, say you had a drop in energy consumption. Well, the occupancy helps you indicate whether it was because you actually were conserving energy or because, say, your occupancy dropped from 95% to 70%. So what it is just another data point to take in when you compare reads or do any regression analysis. Once you start entering reads, which once you activate your account on Monday, you're free to start entering reads that day. You can start, in fact, we encourage it. We encourage you to start taking reads right away. Once you start taking reads, you'll start receiving what are known as building scorecards. Now, building scorecards are emailed every day, and they are a snapshot of the previous day's performance. So I'll bring up an example here. This is an example of, say, a scorecard for the Hilton Garden Inn in Roanoke. And like I said, the building scorecard is emailed every day, and it's just a glance of what the previous day's performance was. So you have 3 bars here: electric, gas, and water. If you have, and the height of the bars indicates the consumption. In this case, it's represented in, say, in spend rather than, just raw consumption. So on November 2nd, they would have received this on November 3rd. But on November 2nd, you can see they spent $3.50 on electricity. Now, the color represents how much the building exceeded or was under the baseline, which is based on the regression analysis. So you can see they spent $3.50 on electricity. However, the green indicates that they were 47% under their forecast or their baseline, what we would have predicted they should have spent it based on the occupancy and weather. However, for the gas meter, even though they only spent $1.90, they were 72% above what we thought they should have spent based on the conditions. And likewise, the water meter, even though they only spent 39 cents on water, they were above the regression analysis, or they were above the baseline or the prediction of what they should have spent. So basically, the building scorecard emailed every day of the previous day is to help you understand how your building's going, or your facility is going from day to day. The deliveries of these won't start right away. We're slated to start delivering the building scorecards on December 8th is when we are slated to deliver those. So moving on, I'm going to talk about reading your meter. Meters can get a little complicated to read. I understand this. So let me bring up some documentation. We're going to go over through some common types of meters just to kind of help people understand how, just some basic ways of sharing meter reads, collecting meter reads. All of this, again, as you can see, this is the documentation we provided. Yes, I see a question come up on text. I'm not ignoring it. I'll get to it at the end. But I just want you to know I saw it, so you don't think I'm ignoring you. Like I said, meters can get a little complicated to read. I'm going to go over some common meter types. Like I said, this is in the documentation. And actually, in these documentations, there's some links to some helpful videos online. I know me explaining to you isn't always the most helpful it can be, and some people need to see somebody actually demonstrate how to take a meter read. So we provided some links for you to do that. But most meter reads are the same. The process is the same. What you do is there's the meter, and it has a value on a dial or a display. And so you take that value. You then multiply that number by the meter multiplied by the meter multiplier if it's applicable. If the meter should indicate what you need to multiply that value by to get the true value. So I've seen electric meters with a multiplier of 120 or 200, even 300. So what you do is you take the value on the display, multiply it by your meter multiplier, and then that's your final value that you would enter into the system. So for example, if you have an electric meter that says 50 kilowatt hours, and it has a meter multiplier of 100, the value entered into the app would be 5,000 kilowatt hours. So the first type of meter I'm going to cover are dial meters. Dial meters, like you see here, are typically just a number of dials on the display. These are very common on electric and gas meters. They're getting less common, but they're still around. And the dials are read from right to left in ones tens, hundreds, thousands, etc. As however many dials there are. The dials vary on how they rotate. Some rotate clockwise, some rotate counterclockwise. It should be indicated on the dial. So what you do when you read this is you indicate the dial. You read from right to left. You indicate the dial, or you indicate the number the dial most recently passed. So let's take a look at this first example. So on the ones, the dial just passed the 7, so we would record a 7. In the tens, the dial just passed the 8, so we record an 8. In the hundreds, we just passed a 3, so we record a 3. And in the thousands, looks like it just passed a 6, so we record a 6. So the value for this dial is 6,387. And then the units that it would be in, like CCF or MCF, would be indicated next to the dial. Doing another example, on the second example, we see on the ones, the dial just passed the 8, so we record an 8. On the tens, just passed the 9, so we record a 9. On the hundreds gets a little more complicated because it looks like it's right on the 8. However, it's not past the 8, so it's kind of like a clock. So when you read a clock, when it says, 11:50 or 10 to 12, the hour hand looks like it's on 12, but it's still 11:50. And it's the same principle here. It's not quite past the 8, so here we record a 7. Even though it's very close to the 8, the value is still a 7. And in the thousands, it's halfway between 6 and 7, so it's 6. So the value here is 6,798. So another thing I should mention, I know I mentioned these dials are common on gas meters. On many gas meters, you may see two dials, one that says temperature compensated and one that says temperature non-compensated. You always do the non-compensated. Opposite. You always do the temperature compensated. I apologize. The other way around. Always read the temperature compensated value. That's the one you're going to want to take when reading from a gas meter. The next type of meters are known as odometer meters. So you'll see these a lot on gas meters and on water meters. These are read just like the odometer on a car. So there's the little tick marks here, and they rotate just like the odometer does on the car. And you basically just read the number from that. So in this case, it's a little grainy, I apologize, but it looks like it says 5972. I think that might be a 1 there. So that's the value, 59721. And you just take that, and if there's a meter multiplier, indicated on here, you would take that, you would multiply that 59721 by the meter multiplier. But if not, then that's just the straight value, it's straight from the odometer ticks. Again, this is a gas meter, so you can see there are two dials here. You can't see which one is which, but you would record from the one that says temperature compensated. And again, this type of odometer meter with the dial, this is common on water meters. But again, you just read the tick mark. You just read the ones you just read the numbers as they're displayed on the odometer. And then the units here is gallons. Again, if there's a multiplier indicated, looks like there's not on this one, you would multiply that to get the true value in gallons. And then the final, here you can see here are the links you can follow to read your water meter. So if you have Adobe Reader, you can just click on these links and they should bring you to some instructions on how to read your water meter or your gas meter. Now the final meters I want to cover are digital display meters. These are getting very common on electric meters. They're the easiest to read on occasion, but sometimes they get a little tricky, and I'll get into that. But basically what you do is you just read the straight value straight from the meter. So in this case, this Excel energy meter, the value is 4,925 kilowatt hours. It doesn't look like there's any meter multiplier on here, so that's your value, 4,925 kilowatt hours, and you would enter that into the system. So that one's pretty easy to read. Some electric meters get a little complicated because of just how the technology, how these meters have progressed lately. So here's one. Looks like it's from the city of Longmont. This is a digital display meter. However, this digital display meter will rotate, so it'll refresh with new information. These collect a lot of information, so it'll refresh with information, say like every 5 seconds, it'll display a new value. What you do is you wait for the display that says kilowatt hours on it. Then you would record that kilowatt hour number. As you can see here in the picture, this is currently displaying just kilowatts. That's not what we want. We want kilowatt hours. So be sure you read the kilowatt hours value. And it can get, like I said, they can take a while to refresh. Sometimes they collect a lot of information, but the kilowatt hours is usually pretty distinct. Now here's an example of that meter multiplier I was talking about. So we have a meter multiplier of 300. So for instance, what you would do is when this screen rotated and brought up the kilowatt hours value, say in this case it's 100, you would multiply that 100 by this 300 to get the value we enter into the system. So if it was 100, or let's make it easy, let's make it 10. Make this math really, really simple. Say it said 10 kilowatt hours. Well, you would take that 10, multiply it by 300, and then multiply it in the system, and then that gives you 3,000 kilowatt hours, and that 3,000 is what you would add into you would enter into the system. Sometimes you'll see just to scroll back up real quick, I've seen many utilities will put a digital display on top of one of these odometer displays, at which point I would say read from the digital display. It's usually easier to read from. It won't typically match because the digital display will only be counting since it's been installed. So go by the digital display. That's the extent of the information I wanted to cover. I'm going to open it up to questions now. I'm going to unmute everyone. I just ask that you mute your end before I do. Before I unmute everyone, I will get to the question that I received via text. This comes from the Crabtree Marriott. This is in regards to the building scorecard. So let me bring the building scorecard back up. And the question is the $350 the actual cost of electricity or the cost per occupied room? It's the whole facility. So I know $350 may look a little small, and that's because this is just example data to show how this appears. But yes, it is the whole facility. Don't be fooled by how small the number is. It's just, like I said, it's just for the sake of argument, but it's for the whole facility. The occupancy is used against the baseline. So here. So I hope I answered your question. Let me just unmute the audience. It's not allowing everyone. Okay. Oh, I got a question from Jeffrey. How do we get our username and password? Had issue with an update at beginning. So your username and password is, well, there's no username. It's the property email. So for instance, going back, the example I used was the Courtyard in Hamilton, Ohio. Their property email is cy-hamiltonohio@concordhotels.com. That's the email that you would use to log into the system if that was your site. So what happens is we're going to activate everybody on Monday. You will receive an invite email, so it'll come to that property email, and you will click on this link. Let's get started now. And then that's where you'll finish the activation process, and that's where you'll set up your password. And then once that's done, you can pretty much start adding meter reads right away. Does anyone have any other questions? I think some people are typing, so I'll let those come in. Apologize, I'm trying to making sure everyone gets unmuted here on my side.
Hello?
Hello. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
My name is William Rojas. I work at the State College Courtyard by Marriott.
Okay.
And I'm off every Tuesday, Wednesday. And my part-time gentleman, elderly gentleman, does my readings for me, and then I input them on paper on Thursdays when I come back to work. How would that affect the readings, putting it into the system on the date that showed below the meter reading?
Yes. You can either give the gentleman, I think I see where, you can either give the gentleman access. He can use the meter app himself, and I'll let you decide the best way, but my advice, you can either have him enter it into the system himself, either using the desktop, like accessing the mobile application through the desktop, or if you have a tablet or a smartphone that if he has one, or if you have one you can lend him, he can do that. The other option is there are some administrators who will have access to the back-end system, and if they can maybe enter data for you, if you want to work it out with them, they can backfill the data. Otherwise, I'd recommend just showing them how to do it on the desktop or on a mobile device. Again, when you log in as your website, you only see your site, so it's not like they can accidentally log data for other people. So there's no chance they'll mess up other data. So that would be my recommendation, is to give them access. Otherwise, you can work it out with the administrators. And Paul Sears is our main administrator at the moment, but you can work it out with him to maybe backfill data.
So the dates would offset if you was to try to put it in on Thursday for Tuesday?
Well, no, what you would do is you would put in Tuesdays. So if you put in Tuesday's info on Thursday, it'll think it's Thursday. And there's another automated check on the system that doesn't allow another reading to occur for another hour. Brian, do you want to contribute?
Yeah. The one thing I'll mention here too, and I'm not sure if Paul's on the phone, but part of the intent of this program is that data is being consistently entered daily, and the reason for that is they want to try to catch. They want to try to catch when there's something going wrong. So, for instance, when there's a water leak, if you wait, 3 or 4 days, that could be 3 or 4 days of wasted water because of a water leak, on the incoming water line to your building. And so, the more quickly you enter in the information, or the more consistently you enter in the information on a daily basis, will definitely help with that process and allow Concord Hospitality and Paul to recognize when there is issues and get those issues rectified, so that you guys aren't wasting money, with a water leak, or with electricity that's because some piece of equipment's been left on for that uses a lot of energy, left on for days and days, or whatever the case may be. So again, like Walker said, there's ways that it can be entered, and so if you have somebody taking readings on a daily basis, probably the best thing is that if they don't have access to a mobile smartphone or an iPad or something, that they can go to one of the computers at the front desk and log the information there.
Oh, okay. So then, what about holidays? What happens on the holidays?
So I will admit there will be some days that are missed because people are off, but you're probably going to want to have a backup to taking those readings. It's not just going to be one person. You're probably going to have more than one person, because nobody works 7 days a week, or at least I hope they're not working 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you're probably going to want to have a backup, or somebody else that reads it, on days when those people aren't on duty. So maybe a primary and a secondary person. Does that make sense?
Yes. One last question. Being that I'm chief over here, would I be able to have access to do this directly on my I don't have a laptop or apps phone.
Yes.
But can I do this on my computer in the shop, or does it have to be somewhere else, like a front desk?
As long as you can get on a web browser, so if you can navigate to the internet, you can bring up the URL, the web page, log in. You can leave it logged in, or you can log out every day, and that page can just stay up all the time. You might have to refresh it on a daily basis, so that you have a place to enter the data. Otherwise, it might show the green check mark still. Typically, it'll refresh automatically, but you may need to refresh it yourself. At any rate, though, yeah, you can have that logged in, and you can have multiple people logged in with that username on different computers. The main thing is you just don't want to be entering in, multiple values per day. The intent is just to enter in one value per day.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian. I'm just going to go through. I have a couple of, if you don't mind, there's a couple of messages came in via the text editor. Crabtree Marriott, we enter the meter readings. How does it convert money on our scorecard? Do you have each property cost per utility? Yeah, that's our technology partner has a pretty extensive database of estimated regional costs. So when you gave us your address, we typed it in. The system has your address, knows where your facility is, and based on its location, estimates the cost based on the pretty extensive background they have, and they're constantly refreshing utility rates, so it's pretty accurate. But no, we don't have the exact unit cost of your property, but it's a pretty close estimation. Jeff Newland just asked, are you able to use a laptop and cell phone? Yes, you can. It's web-based, so you can use whatever has a web browser. If you want to use a laptop, you can use a laptop. If you want to use a smartphone, you can use a smartphone. And like I said, it can be a Mac, it can be a Windows-based device, as long as it has or an Android or an iPhone, as long as it has a web browser. So you should be able to use that. Henry Roy asked, you take meter readings twice a day. Can the system accommodate this? It should, as long as the meter readings are an hour apart. That's the only thing that it won't let you do. You can't if you take a meter reading, you have to wait another hour before you add another meter reading. But otherwise, yeah, twice a day should be fine. You shouldn't have to. But the more data, the better. Any other questions?
This is Ray in Beechwood. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Good. We have a restaurant that is sub-metered. How does this play in?
The restaurant is sub-metered. Are they billed separately? Is that the point?
We take a reading at the end of the month off of their meters that are off of our electricity and gas use.
Sure. So I'd have to look at your survey, but I'm not sure how many electric meters were indicated on your survey. If you indicated it on your survey, it could very well be there.
We didn't indicate it because there's only one coming off the transformer.
Sure. So you're just using the main utility meter. So what I would say is if you're just doing the facility use and you don't have any control over right now the way, if it wasn't indicated on the survey, then you would just be entering what you would be doing is just entering the overall facility use, and you wouldn't be entering the data from the sub-meter for the restaurant. However, we can if you want to talk with Paul Sears, we can maybe work with a way to add a meter for your restaurant use. And so basically you would also just do the same, you would just add a read every day for the restaurant.
One of the issues, we don't have access to the restaurant.
Oh, okay. Well, if you just do unfortunately, it sounds like the way we have it set up is that it's just that you would just use your facility, the overall meter, to add readings.
Is that meter? I was just going to ask if that meter is it a sub meter or is it actually a separate meter with a different service going to that restaurant that you guys are responsible for? If it's a separate meter, or if it's a sub meter, and it's just part of the main, so it's it's a circuit off of the main coming into the property, then it probably isn't necessary to have that in the system. But if it's a separate service coming into the restaurant as the main hotel property, then you may want to have that in the system as well.
No, it is how it comes off of our panel to them.
Yeah, so then that information is already being captured in that main meter, and it probably isn't necessary.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Jeremy asked, who do we contact when an additional meter is added, such as irrigation? You can contact the administrator, Paul Sears, or you can contact me directly, and you should have my contact information from the meeting invite. And in fact, if any of you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you with either add meters to the system or help you with meter reads or figuring out how to get the best read from your meter. So, yeah, please don't, I should have specified that at the beginning. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody. I'm sorry, does someone else have a question on the phone?
Yeah, I have a question. It's Bob Weir, Spring Hill Suites, Bakery Square.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I have a meter on my sprinkler system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I add that as well, or are we just getting main water readings?
Is it off? Is it is it a separate supply from the city?
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's coming. It's right. It's coming from the city, and I have the meter on the sprinkler system.
Yeah, then you would again, if you indicated this meter on your survey. Good. Then there is a spot for it, and you would read it. You would use the mobile app to add the meter, to add the readings from the meter. Yeah. No. Good question. Sometimes irrigation is pulled from the main feed. Sometimes it's on the feed. Again, I know water can get especially confusing. But yeah, you would just enter it like any. You would enter. It would have its own spot in the app, and you would click on that, and you would record the reading from the irrigation meter, and you would submit it, and then you would go to your main meter and do the same thing. So you would treat it as two different meters in the system.
He's referring to fire sprinkler, not irrigation.
Oh, if you have a meter and it's billed, even if it's really low, I would recommend, if you indicate it as a separate meter, it will be the same. It's the same thing. It's just another meter in the system. Even if it's really low. Go on.
What about for a fire sprinkler meter that doesn't change? It's not going to affect the system when it's the same reading for 3 months and then changes whenever we do a quarterly flow?
That's a good question. I know it's a hassle, but I would add the meter. So part of this push with the system is definitely water use.
I I would enter it anyways every day. It's going to be the same number every day until a flow comes. But I mean, by putting in the same number every day, it's not going to consistently give me an error.
No, it's just going to say 0. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but good question. That was a good question to ask. But yeah, it'll just say 0. It'll just take it says same 0. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's irrigation or fire. It's the same way. If you indicate it as a separate meter on the system, you would just record it as such, because there'll be two meters. Like say if you have a main meter and a fire suppression meter or an irrigation meter, they would be treated as separate meters in the system and then summed together in the system. You don't have to do the summing. Any other questions? Crunchy Marriott asked, if you miss one day, can you input 2 entries the next day, i.e. a holiday? Yeah, I think what Brian was saying earlier was, there's probably going to be a time when you're not there. If you miss a day, if you don't have anybody else, so if you're off that day and you don't have anybody else to make a meter reading for you, what I would do is contact system administrator. So again, it's Paul, to either backfill, or you would just enter the day, the current day. So if you miss one day and you show up the next day, I would just enter that day's reading, and it'll basically backfill. It won't be as accurate, but it will, because it's all cumulative data. It'll average out over those 2 days between the days. But otherwise, I would work on trying to have a backup.
And really the only thing that will occur when you miss a day is that you won't have a scorecard for that particular utility type, electricity, water, whatever you missed on that day. So that next day that you come into work, there won't be a scorecard for that previous day for that data type because you didn't take a reading. But you will get a scorecard on that next day that you enter a data point for.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for joining. Again, you have my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I can provide any assistance that I can. Otherwise, look on Monday for the activation emails, and then once you get everything activated with your password, get your activation complete, you can start taking meter reads that day, and we encourage it. So thank you again for joining.